Hi, welcome to my ramblings about being a ex-Jehovah's Witness. I was just clicking around briefly and checking out some of the experiences, and I just want to thank everyone who's posted their honest experiences about being a former Jehovah's Witness. And one thing I just didn't happen to see, found a little lacking, and I thought I'd talk about it a little bit, is just the experiences of when we first come out and how to, and just to encourage, really actually mostly to just encourage those who've recently come out, been disfellowshipped or disassociated. I mean, that's a rough time. And I don't really want to touch too much on war stories about it. I think there's enough posts with war stories about how tough it is, but just so everyone who's just come out knows that they're not alone, and we know how rough it is, and so anyway, it's just tough. You lose your friends, your family, even your identity, and there's just a lot of questions when you first come out. Um, but anyway, I'm not gonna since this is kind of dedicated to people who should already know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to explain any terminology or anything like that in this one. Anyone else is welcome to listen along at their pleasure or leisure or whatever. Um, but anyway, my experience, um, I was baptized at 18, was married at 23, and um, those are just the only two real relevant experiences, the marriage being the more important one. Um, I am fortunately, I look at it more fortunately now. I fortunately married a woman who was verbally abusive to me, very extremely so. She was a witness, of course, and and it was bad, um, you know. And plus, to top it off, we had a business that we ran together, um, and so the verbal abuse um, was could be every waking hour of every day for 2 or 3 days a week, depending on her mood. Uh, yeah, and there's worse than that, but this is more about explaining my experience than complaining about my experience. Um, but yeah, that went on for a long time, and throughout that time, I got into the habit of just leaving. At first, I'd leave for the night and sleep in my car. It would get so bad. Um, then I moved on to sleeping in motels. Got tired of paying for that, and this would go on several times a year, and that does not include the times I endured it, and just stayed home. And from the motel, finally, I broke down to a friend and told him, um, I need a place to stay. My marriage is crap, and every now and then, I was welcome on his couch as needed. And so that went on for, well, throughout 12 years of our marriage. That went on. Our marriage lasted one more. But yeah, finally one night I went to sleep on my friend's couch, and then the next I heard from her she wanted me to move out, and so I said, okay. And so I packed up and moved out, and that was good. Worked for me, and I was. Oh, and what I didn't say is that the whole time, all these years since I was baptized at 18, and before that, I was in relatively good standing. Um, I did my 10 hour or just under 10 hours a week. Um, I did my number twos, my number fours, went to pretty much all the meetings. Um, you know, And so I was relatively respectable during that time. I didn't mean to leave that out. Um, but yeah, so I digressed back to where I was. Um, yeah, I got my own place, and then my wife at the time wants to work things out. And I expressed to her that that would only happen if she could read an anger management book or two. That did not go too well. That she didn't have an anger management problem, and every problem we had was spiritual and could be solved by the Bible, watchtower reading, books, literature, elders. They could all be solved by that, and we'd tried that way too many times before, and none of that had ever worked. And no, yeah, far be it from me to suggest a simple book for the sake of our marriage, but I did. Um, and I had a good one too. Um, and so, no. And so, in the meantime, while I separated from her, I had to get another job. And while I was separated from her, she was talking to the elders while I was separated and and inactive. I became inactive when I separated. And while that was going on, she was talking to the elders who were informing her that, in fact, she shouldn't work things out with me unless I became active again. And anyone who's been around knows how unscriptural that advice is. And I expressed to the elders precisely how unscriptural that advice was, and it fell on deaf ears. I don't know why. I think maybe she's the one going to meetings. I'm the one who's not. So they supported her. And so in the end, I divorced her after almost a year of separation. I Even after that, I was willing to work things out with her. I hadn't done anything wrong. I was still in good standing, just a legal divorce. Um, and the elders kind of waved their magic wand at her and said, "No, you're not getting back together with this guy." And so anyone who's been around knows what that means. That means I'm put in the position of going back to an abusive relationship or moving on with my life. And I chose, oh, I have one other option. I could have, after I didn't move on with my life, I could have feigned repentance. But no, I chose to move on with my life. Eventually, uh, over a year after my legal divorce, I was seeing a girl, and then I went and told on myself um, because I wanted her to be able to move on with her life too. I'd moved on with mine. It'd been long enough. It just wasn't going to happen. Um, I wasn't going back to an abusive relationship, and nor was I going to feign repentance for being sorry for moving on with my life. So it was not a difficult decision for them to disfellowship me. But my Okay, so back to my original point. I hope that didn't go on too long. Um, yeah, we all know how tough it is, and when you first start coming out, being shunned, not having friends, family, work sometimes, at least in my case that was the case, and plus the loss of identity, and plus the loss of really honestly thinking that it's still the truth, or that I thought it was still the truth, and that I was somehow forsaken by God. I mean, we'll all tell our war stories, but no one I've really seen has mentioned what that kind of a loss is, too. I mean, that's a big loss of identity. God's forsaken you. Um, and I was disfellowship for a while, still just kind of thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to live my life the way I'm living it, and that's the truth, and I've forsaken it, and that's that. And, fortunately for me, I did leave with such a clean conscience. I just eventually figured out that I just did nothing wrong. I was a victim, and I'm not sitting here playing the victim card. I was victimized by people who are victims. Is the way I've come to see it now. And so when there's people that shun you, family, um, I've been there. I understand, and I just hope that anyone new coming out can realize that they're victims. Yeah, first, that's the easy one to realize. But to figure out that the people that are victimizing you are in fact themselves victims, and um, the encouraging part about that is is that you know you're free now. At least you're free now. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say. And I admire your courage for everything you have to go through. It takes so much courage. It, yeah, it takes immense courage. A lot of us out here understand. So that's all I have to say. Courage and freedom.